Welcome to the university's 56th year. Here we are again in Irvin, excuse me. You know, Meredith Love and I talked a couple of years ago about the possibility of coming back to Irvin when the COVID was over and we were able to get out of the PAC. I love the PAC, but this is the place to have our opening breakfasts every year. And Aaron seems to be staying offshore, okay? So let's begin by recognizing some of your scholarly accomplishments over this past year. Christopher Johnson for editing the second volume of Carolina Currents. Christine, please go ahead, absolutely. Chris has included more than a dozen of our faculty in this volume, so pick up a copy if you haven't already. It's great reading. Christine Masters for authoring The Power of Voice in AI Writing, Practical Strategies for Business Communication. You guys, quicker. Christopher Washington for authoring The Non-Binary Jane Austen. And to Will Bolt and Scott Kaufman for authoring Impeachment in U.S. History, which will be published this fall. Congratulations, John. Awards and distinctions. Delilah Clark and Jason Dahl for serving as delegates to the United Nations Ocean Conference in Nice, France. Todd Couch and Dylan Tatum for participating in ASKU's Emerging Leaders Program. Erica Johnson for receiving the Humanities Council Acres Prize, which will be awarded this fall. Tammy Pulowski for receiving the Kevin J. Swick Award for Teacher Education by the South Carolina Association for the Education of Young Children. Rusty Ward for receiving the Teaching Award by the South Carolina Sociological Association. Association Officers and Conveners, Adam Hull for his appointment as Editor-in-Chief of the Raleigh Review. Louis Venters for organizing the PD's History Directors Consortium. Matthew Hagler for his appointment to the Research Board of the Office of Juvenile Justice National Mentoring Research Center. Jessica Burke for her election to the Executive Committee of the South Carolina Sociological Association. And to Rebecca Water on her election as President of the South Carolina Speech Language Hearing Association. Finally, let me recognize an achievement that's simply too voluminous to provide individual mention. Over the past year, this faculty published a total of 92 refereed articles, chapters, and poems, and participated in 63 artistic performances, exhibitions, shows, and recitals. That's an amazing body of work over the course of the year. My compliments to all of you. And a special recognition to Sharon O'Kelly for convening faculty leadership from across the nation on this campus this past summer. Thank you for showing our version of shared governance to these colleagues, Sharon. Money. The General Assembly provided us with a responsible budget this year, not quite as generous as last year, but sufficient. We received $2.9 million in recurring fundings and another $7.8 million in non-recurring funding. The latter will provide additional renovation support for the McNair, Leatherman, and Hyman buildings and build crosswalks between the main campus and the Griffin Athletic Complex. Year before last, we used a portion of the tuition mitigation money to fund a COLA for everyone and to fund special pay increases to 52 faculty members. This year, we put the recurring money to good use again by providing all faculty and staff a 3% pay increase, 50% higher than that of other state agencies. In addition, 68 of our staff received special adjustments as a part of the state's new classification structure. So of that $2.9 million this year, more than 35% of it went to special pay increases. And this year, once again, we will provide more research and development support per faculty member than any other college in South Carolina, R1 or comprehensive. You know, someone who should know better remarked recently that we can't just keep giving raises every year. I disagree. We have provided salary increases for the past 25 years, almost always at a level higher than that of other institutions. We have also provided Christmas bonuses, the only state agency to do that every single year. Over this period, the university's budget has increased from $33 million a year to $83 million a year. Putting new money into pay raises every year may not work for everyone, but it works for us. Look, I get it. The day may come when we can't afford to do this, but right now we can and we will. Grants from the PD Medical and Health Science Consortium are currently allocating $960,000 to us to fund new occupational therapy, speech pathology, and physician assistant positions. This is yet another effort at paying our bills with someone else's money. We've become fairly accomplished at this. Last year, we committed more scholarship funding to our students than ever before. This year, we maintained it. Altogether, our students are recipients of more than $27 million in university, foundation, state, and federal scholarships. I've become a bit redundant on this message, but I'll say it again. These are scholarships, not loans, no paybacks necessary. You know, all of this underscores the fact that our budget is a dynamic document. It's not a static spreadsheet. We need to be careful about overextending, but we should never hesitate to spend money on efforts that advance our effectiveness. Addressing faculty and staff pay compression and growing student scholarships are two of these areas. Unfortunately, the state budget is expected to be tight this year. Nevertheless, we'll ask the legislature for the usual tuition mitigation support. We'll ask them for funding to renovate the library, and we'll ask for sufficient money to address a variety of deferred maintenance projects across the campus. Altogether, we'll request $10 to $12 million in state funding this year. If the budget permits, we'll also look at more adjustments for faculty compression later this year and student scholarships for next year. One final financial issue. 2 years ago, our math and science department sponsored a very successful STEM day on campus for high school students. Let's do that again this year, and let's add an arts, humanities, and social science day, a health and behavioral science day, and a business and education day. We'll set aside $100,000 to fund these efforts. I'd like to ask John Rowan to coordinate the overall effort and allocate the money equitably. I'd like to ask Vernon to organize the science chairs, Meredith Love to organize the arts, humanities, and social science leadership, Jonathan and Eric to coordinate the business and education effort, and Karen and Megan to organize the health and behavioral sciences. These are fine recruiting tools. Let's use them more effectively. The politics. Meredith, don't bring your hands within an inch of each other. Go ahead and get them all together. The politics. Look, everybody in this room knows it's been a difficult year for higher education nationally. We don't need to stand here and rehash everything that's occurred, but we need to remember it. Winston Churchill was fond of saying, "Don't argue about the difficulties will argue for themselves." That is certainly the case these days with higher education in America. You and I just need to be strategic and shrewd. That's how we'll prevail over other institutions who can't decide whether to be submissive or bewildered or both. A few years ago, PBS produced a documentary series called Eyes on the Prize. The film focused on the history of the American Civil Rights Movement, and it was an extraordinary production, not simply for its content, but for its message. The movement's leadership refused to be distracted by the theatrics around them. They kept their eyes on the prize, legislation that would secure civil rights and voting rights. We need to follow their example and not be distracted by the false flags in national politics or the dramatic underpinnings playing out in other venues. Our job is to teach our students to use their minds to establish their values and form their own belief systems. We do that with meaningful instruction and research, powerful ideas, and strong and persuasive voices. That's our prize, and it's one of the most compelling obligations in contemporary society. Let's keep our eyes on it. It's what we do, and it's what we do best. This year, as in previous years, we successfully stopped most of the onerous state legislation. I am very pleased that the public university presidents worked together effectively in this effort, with a couple of exceptions. And once again, I want to applaud our state and chapter AAUP leadership for their hard work. I do wish we could enlist the support of all presidents, and I wish we can increase participation from the AAUP and other associations. Because when it comes to lobbying pressure, size does matter. I do want to remind you that this university has fared well in these clashes. Over the years, we built a strong cadre of gubernatorial, legislative, and judicial friends who respect this institution, and they respect the people we serve. We and our students have everything to gain by continuing to sustain meaningful relationships with those who have helped us politically and financially. We don't need to agree with our allies on every issue. We just need to be able to count on them when we need it most. This spring, there are primary elections for governor and for every seat in the State House of Representatives. It will likely be a contentious legislative session. Back to previous sentence. We just need to be able to count on their support when we need it the most. Of course, all of these struggles are much easier to manage given the advice and counsel of this university's senior staff and faculty leadership. Let me ask these two groups to stand and accept our thanks. That's you, Karen. Thank you. Accreditation. We are in the final 3 years of another accreditation reaffirmation process. Over the past few months, a number of new accrediting structures have been proposed nationally as an alternative to the existing regional societies and entities, SACs in our case. But many of these new proposals appear to be encumbered with partisan concerns and have little to do with promoting academic excellence. 3 weeks ago, our Board of Trustees accepted my recommendation that we stay with SACs. SACs can be annoying, petty, and short-sighted, but they've never promoted an ideological agenda. We will stay with SACs for now unless federal or state law compels us to do otherwise. And I want to thank Christine Masters for continuing to be our faculty liaison. Yeah, who would have ever thought we would be standing here advocating for SACs? Another sign of the times, huh? International travel and research. Over the past 2 years, FMU has hosted and sent abroad more students on exchange and travel studies than at any other period in our history. We also welcomed our newest partner at the University of Burgos. This past year, our international collaboration grants and professional development funds have sent faculty to Germany, Canada, the UK, Ecuador, Saudi Arabia, Thailand, and France as we continue to expand our international research and outreach opportunities. 2 years ago, we created our first International Studies Center at Wild Sumaco. We are now in the process of establishing 2 additional centers at the University of Prince Edward Island on the site of its new Climate Change Center, and at Landau in Rhineland-Pfalz, Germany. In addition to these efforts, Polly Hazelton and Lori and Matt Turner escorted our first Asian study abroad trip to Thailand last spring. There is enormous potential with this opportunity if we can find ways to solve the cost and timing issues. We'll ask Lori, Matt, and Polly to continue to develop this effort. These ISCs are designed a little differently than other student travel opportunities. Their goal is to provide more consistent and affordable options for students while doubling their numbers. They are annual study programs with recurring funding and curricula designed for cohorts of 12 to 14 students per trip. Ultimately, they will provide a more extensive international opportunity while easing the financial burden. If you have an interest in being a part of this teaching group, get with Mark Blackwell. and I remain indebted to him, his staff, and the various site coordinators for continuing to direct the most successful faculty and student exchange program in the state. Property. There is a strong possibility that the state's very next purchase of conservation property will be located right here in Florence County. About 5 miles east of this campus, it will be about 9,000 acres in size and extend along the Great Petey River north of the Marion Bridge, almost to the I-95 bridge. This tract is one of the Sunoco properties sold to Manulife 3 years ago. On the maps, it's referred to as Duck Pond. With a little work, it would be an ideal field site for our forestry and environmental science programs. If the state acquires this property, we have asked that this land be transferred to us for these purposes and protected by conservation easements. 3 of the purchasers, the South Carolina Office of Resiliency, the Open Space Institute, and the Darla Moore Foundation, have supported our request. The governor is also in concurrence. Let's see how it works out over the next few months. I did say 9,000 acres. The Leatherman Behavioral Care Pavilion. Last week, hundreds of community constituents attended the ribbon cutting for the first new behavioral care center built by the state in the last 3 decades. I am very proud that our university was a part of bringing this concept to reality. I am even more proud that many of our Psych D and psychiatric nurse practitioners will work there in the years ahead. This new center is all about finding novel ways to deal with behavioral disorders across the state and across the region. It's only appropriate that our faculty and alumni be at the forefront of developing new treatments and offering innovative care. Finally, let me close with a final word on the topic of illness. A couple of years ago, I thanked this faculty for the support that you provide those who become ill, sick, or otherwise incapacitated. I'll quote you a paragraph from that speech. When a colleague is ill, it's amazing to see how quickly the university community reacts by providing a cushion of support. It's not simply an institutional response, it's an individual one, multiplied over and over and over across the faculty and through the staff. It speaks to your deep feelings of compassion and empathy and affection for one another. Among all of your characteristics as a faculty, I admire this one the most. Well, this past fall, it was my turn in the barrel. After unexpected surgery in September, I had a difficult time restoring my strength and regaining my health. I simply couldn't find a path to recovery. Unfortunately, physiology affected psychology, and the spiral continued. But through your visits and messages, I was constantly reminded that Folly and I were never alone during this ordeal. Many of you understand and understood when things were going well and when they were going poorly, and you adjusted the approach accordingly. As with so many other colleagues, and they have discovered in similar circumstances, your support was as therapeutic as the medicine, with far fewer side effects. Earlier in life, a priest told me that when you're a child, it's a cruelty you encounter that makes you cry. When you're an adult, it's the kindness shown to you. Well, I'll spare you all that, but I want you to know I'm doing much better these days. Thank you all. Let's have a great year.